Can you give me like a snapshot version of why you think the Gospel of John isn't an anonymous gospel?
So one thing that's important to realize here is that Bart Ehrman will toggle back and forth between two meanings of the word anonymous. And I don't feel that this is very honest of Ehrman. One meaning of the word anonymous is simply that the author doesn't literally give his own name in the gospel, like, my name is John, the son of Zebedee, or something like that.
Right.
And, Bart will say, well, of course it's anonymous. It's a technical term. This is how scholars use the term. But then he'll toggle over to implying very strongly that nobody knew who wrote it. And those aren't the same thing. I mean, if you tore off the front cover of my book and you tore out the, cover page and the endorsements, right? How often in the actual text of the book do I go, I, Lydia McGrew, say this? You could say that a modern book is anonymous in that sense. And yet, obviously, that doesn't mean that nobody knows who wrote it. So I just want to point that out right there, that ambiguity on the word. I think that we can say that the Gospel's definitely not anonymous in that interesting sense. First of all, because of all the Gospels, this author actually emphasizes who he is, that he was this eyewitness. So in John 19, that he was literally at the foot of the cross. And then at the very end, there's this bit where either he, concerning himself, or maybe in like 2 verses, someone else concerning him says, yeah, that guy, the disciple whom Jesus loved, is the one who wrote this gospel. And that word right there, as Richard Bauckham argues very well, it doesn't mean he had some connection, very remote connection with it. It might mean that he dictated it to a scribe, but that's the most remote it's going to get. He was known as to who wrote it. But then also the external evidence concerning the authorship is very decisive. It's unanimous. If this were not a biblical book, it would be unhesitatingly accepted that this was written by a man named John. He was Jesus' disciple. He was close to him, etc., etc. Further in the book, I get into this difference. Was it John, the beloved disciple, who was not the son of Zebedee, or John, the beloved disciple, who was the son of Zebedee? And I get into the weeds on some of that. Mm-hmm. But right now, I'm just emphasizing, no, it wasn't anonymous. It was known from earliest time. Even at the time of Justin Martyr, super early, he calls all 4 of the Gospels the memoirs of the apostles and their companions.
Mm-hmm. Well, that gets into the dating issue, too, because not only do we have, because oftentimes it's cited as being this possibly 2nd century, maybe mid to late 2nd century writing at best. But you just given at least one reason why we think that this is actually quite early. Anything else you want to say about that?
Sure. Well, Justin Martyr actually quotes a verse from John 3, and it's unique. It's where Jesus is talking to Nicodemus about being born of the Spirit. Mm-hmm. And there's just no way it could be anything else. I mean, if you try to quibble with it, but the wording is so close. It's very clear. And he's so early 2nd century. So it's got to precede that.
Yeah.
And it can't be any later than that. There's also a textual issue I don't want to go too far into, but where a fragment was discovered far away, and it takes time. If the gospel originated in Ephesus, as plausibly it did, then, that has to travel for a fragment to be discovered in Egypt. So those are some additional sort of external reasons to regard it as early. Then there are all kinds of internal reasons of knowledge that the author has of Jewish customs and so forth that ceased at the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. So those are just some of the many reasons.